I will now call the February 13th, 2024 City Council meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our guests. It's always exciting to see new faces and old faces sometimes, but people here. We'll start our meeting tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Sammy, would you do roll call, please?
Yes, we have Mayor Bell,
Here.
Councillor Fox, Councillor Engelbretson,
Here.
Councillor Lehman,
Here.
Councillor Wells,
Here.
Councillor Smith.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Under mayor's comments, I would like to remind counselors to sit forward, make sure your mics are turned on. And speak into the microphone for those that are going to be listening to this live or on the recording. We do have one application that was received for city council. And Brandon, is it okay if I point you out? Brandon Rhodes is here. After saying it that way, that was kind of silly. But since we just received the application and y'all haven't had time to go through it, we can do, I would prefer if we put it off so you had a chance to review and we can do the formal appointment in the March meeting. That agreeable with everybody? Okay. And is that agreeable with you, Mr. Rhodes? Thank you very much. So other than that, I do want to remind you that I still am looking for some input back from counselors in terms of which committees you'd like to be liaison for. At this point, we have Finance Audit Committee open, and we have Heritage Committee, and we have Main Streets. I'm assuming Council Engelbretson and Councillor Fox that you'll stay as alternates on the Lane Act. Is that correct?
Sure, and I've been going to the Heritage.
You've also been going to Heritage. All right. Can I put your name down there?
I thought it was on there.
Well, I sort of did it with two things, knowing, you know, that not everybody can make every meeting. So I put you on for you and Council Engelbretson to be able to go back and forth. So if you two are willing to continue in that vein, that would be fantastic. So then that looks like we have Main Streets and Audit Finance. Yeah, now, Councillor Wells, you were on Audit Finance last year. Would you like to continue on that, or would you like to do Main Streets or?
So is planning, because planning was.
Councillor Lehman put his name forward for planning,
Yeah,
but next year is another option.
no, that's fine. I just saw when I saw that email, I saw that, yeah, no, that's, just not real good with finance and audit, but I'm happy to stay on it if nobody wants to
All
do
right,
it. You should do it because you're really good at that stuff.
Well.
Well, it is a learning opportunity. I will say, when I was the liaison to Planning Commission before I moved into the role as mayor, and I knew nothing really about planning, and I learned a great deal. I don't know that I was helpful for that committee, but it was certainly helpful for me.
I'm happy to stay on it if nobody else wants to do that.
Okay, well, we'll leave it that way, and then we'll still have one opening on Main Streets and we can do that next month.
Okay.
Okay, when we have a full council. Or You can switch at that point.
We ought to just say,
We should vote him in tonight.
yeah, let's vote him in tonight.
And Sammy,
Where do we have Counselor Smith?
Counselor Smith is on Parks and Trees.
Thank you.
And I'll get you a complete list, Sammy. I have scribbles and scratches and question marks, but I'll update that and make sure that you have that. I think that's all I have for mayor's comments. Congratulations to all of you on surviving not only the holidays, but the ice storm. It seems like, I can't believe that it's already almost the middle of February, because this has just gone, it seems like one event after another. And so thank you all for being here. Thank you all for surviving. I had an opportunity to talk to Terry Dawson just briefly today. They're going to be out of their house another 6 months.
Oh my,
God, that was-
is it 6 months?
6 months, yeah, for a variety of reasons. And he said it could be much worse. No one was injured. They lost very, very little property because they had the opportunity to move it out before it started raining and thawing, but it's a combination of events. So that was the latest, but he says they're fine. All our things are stored and they're sort of camping out. Doing just fine. That if he needed anything, he knew that he could come to this community and he would be overwhelmed with offers. So yes, it was good to see him, and I was certainly sorry to hear that. But he seems to be surviving and they have a vacation coming.
I'm sorry, who is this?
Terry Dawson.
Okay.
The pastor and owner of Coburg Pizza. Her house was severely damaged in that ice. Tree came down and punctured several holes in the roof. Agenda review. Sammy, are there any proposed changes to tonight's agenda?
We do. In the red folder, you guys had the application from Brandon Rhodes that it doesn't really go into the agenda, but it was an addition to the packet. Also, there is a report from City Administrator Adam Hanks on the after action review summary, which is also agenda item number 9. And then the city administrators or a city administration report, which is item 10. The only other change to the agenda is on the last page under future meetings. The city council work session has changed to March 5th from February 27th.
So will we not have a work session February 27th?
That was when we.
That's, yes, thank you. Thank you for that reminder. Short-term memory is a terrible thing to lose, apparently. But nothing else in February after tonight. So, hey, it's a win-win.
Transportation ad hoc.
That's right, transport, and that is a very good committee. I'm anxious to hear input back from all of those committee members. Do we have any citizen testimony tonight?
We do.
All right.
We have one, and it's Mike Watson. I'll have you
Hi.
come up here, Mike.
Well, welcome, Mr. Watson. This is an opportunity for residents and community members to express their views, concerns, and opinions on matters related to the city. So would you please state your name and your address?
I'm Michael Watson, 91080 Abbey Road that does not get mail, which is what I want to talk about.
Right. And Mr. Watson, I would like to recognize you as a formal council member too, correct?
Yeah, this is beautiful here. First time I've been in it in a council meeting here. We've almost been in closets before and stuff. This is great. And thank you guys all, because I know what you guys do. So thank you.
Thank you for being here and thank you for your prior service. All right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I guess you guys are probably all familiar with the number one topic on I Love Coburg Facebook, which is mail, or at least one of the top conversations that we have. Some of you live it, some of you are on a different part of town, but the situation is getting much, much worse. And the reason why is because mail after COVID has changed. When you give a zip code or an address, it's all computerized. And now significant number of places when you put Coburg in, if you put 97408, it will not accept Coburg. It will go to Eugene, and Eugene is returning the mail. So I've had one daughter taken to collections. I've had prom dresses returned, but Dairy Mart, which is a great citizen, I love Dairy Mart, and from what I understand, is probably one of their busiest locations here in Coburg. You know, they're a great citizen, but the post office there is not the US Post Office. It's run by Dairy Mart, and they have a contract with UPS. So UPS will not deliver to PO boxes. You have to put a street address. And we used to put 91145 Dairy Mart, then box 8349 that would get to us. Now a lot of places are dropping the 8349. It won't accept anything except for a formal physical address. So things are getting a lot worse, and mail is getting returned. And I just kind of wanted to start the discussion to see if we could brainstorm ways. I mean, we were chatting in the back. I mean, it is an issue that isn't going to get any better unless we have a discussion. I know Dairy Mart would love to keep the people of Coburg happy. Maybe we get them involved in the discussion, because really there are in between people. They have the contracts. In the past, I've gone to the postmaster of Eugene. You know, said, do you put boxes where it's the new neighborhood that went in, they put in mailboxes so it gets delivered to them, but there's no plans to deal with what already exists. So don't have any problem with getting my mail at Dairy Mart, but it's getting really, really bad. I'm having 1 out of every 4 or 5 things I order now either returned, they drop the box off, it goes to the office at Dairy Mart, they say it's not them, they return it. So I just think we should maybe have a discussion. And when I've tried to do it as an individual, I'm not getting anywhere. So I didn't know as a city, we could start brainstorming and see what we could do.
Thank you.
So
We've certainly, we've had some conversations about this. What we have here in Coburg is called a village post office, and that's what you described. So we don't have a physical post office, but we, as you said, the contract is with Dairy Mart, and so that's the physical location for our village post office. Mr. Hanks, would you like to add anything to the conversation at all?
Yeah, this came up right when my first or second meeting I was here was some discussion. So I kind of jumped in a little bit late, but it's still an ongoing issue, obviously. I did have, I looked back through some documents and had an exchange with, after a lot of failed attempts, had an exchange with the person named Byron Ramirez, who is EMF. What the EMF stands for, but out of Salem. So someone above, assuming above the postmaster, you know, the local postmaster level, and I kind of outlined there's a number of issues that you eliminated a few of them. Who gives delivery, don't, and the +4, and the listing of Coburg 408 as a on their website. It's a viable listed community alternate. But what you're experiencing, the reality is that it's not working in all computer systems. But the official lookups, it shows it as a legitimate viable option, but clearly we had a lot of people saying that it's not functional. It's So I don't have any good resolution. I think there's more work we can do, and I think that the voice of the citizens probably does help us. Probably what got me at least a contact further up the chain was because we're the city asking, not an individual. So the answer that I got were a series of questions that asked me back, and I responded to the question. So, but that has been a bit. So it's probably rattle the cages again and put it on a follow-up council meeting for an update. I don't know yet any defined actions I would propose, but I think more thinking and provide an update that might develop.
Councilor Fox?
I just want to say that I've experienced some of the same things, even though I don't have any mail issues. And it comes with whatever the post office has is not relayed out somehow. Because whenever you say 97408, it will go Eugene, and I'll say no, Coburg, and they're like, we don't have that. I had a credit card that had me as Eugene, and I would sign up for things as Coburg, and it would reject it. And I finally had to call the credit card and say, I want you to change that. It was like moving mountains to, well, really, or do you really exist? Is it a town?
Well, we think so.
Different databases as well. as
Right.
Eliminated a little
Yeah.
bit too. You have, SPS, tax certified database, all the different firms don't all use the same databases, don't have the same kind of hierarchy of primary level, and then should. They use components of it, but it's not universal. I think it's part of the problem. And then their operating rules also are somewhat different. So it is a real, it is a head scratcher, and there's a variety of things that I don't, that may be disparate issues that we can't all attack with one contact. But we find out at least some chunks that we can work on quality.
Councilor Engelbrechtson.
If I could, Mr. Watson, have you had any luck, like when you're using UPS or FedEx or one of those services that will only take a physical address? Have you had any luck when you give them your actual street address for that? Because they
No,
should
they're
deliver to your
different
street address.
levels, and
Okay.
because of my job, I have some stuff that needs to be here for the hospital that it needs to be here. And I make sure all those are shipped FedEx, because FedEx will deliver to the home. However, most places that you order, one of the ways to save money when you ship UPS is low priority. So everything from Amazon or whatever is low priority. And that's about 95% of UPS, and all that will only go to Dairy Mart. It will not come to the house. UPS rarely delivers to the home unless it is a high priority, someone pays high priority.
USPS comes to my house frequently.
UPS or USPS?
Yeah.
USPS does not. And so
Agreed.
sometimes I have to look. You know, sometimes they'll tell you which way it's going to go, often not, but I have, UPS comes to my house.
He meant USPS. You meant United States Postal Service, correct?
No,
I'm what now?
Did you mean?
No, I meant UPS,
Oh,
Because
United Parcel Service, the brown
Really?
trucks.
they
They
do.
circle our neighborhood, but usually most of the stuff you get is when people pay a little bit more for that delivery. If you order from Amazon, they will not deliver to my house. I don't know. Do you have the same thing? You're just down the street.
Well, 3 comments I had. One is the first time this came to city council 5 months ago was through the citizen complaint
Yes.
and it
we-
had to
we
do
followed
with-
up.
with the employee issue, and that was followed up.
Yeah, we have followed up on all
And that
of
did
the
seem
things
to
that I brought forward.
improve that customer relations piece. The second thing, I had a tenant try to send me direct deposit through mail, but their bank would only do it if it had 97408 plus the 4 digits. So I asked what the 4 digits is for here and they did not know. But when I looked at my Amazon orders, it showed the 4 digits, 9501, I think it was. So I'm waiting to see if next time they try to have the direct deposit through the bank with the, if that will get it through or not.
It is certainly an
Yeah.
issue. And I think to some degree, all of us here in Coburg have experienced it, whether we live on the west side or the east side or somewhere in the middle. And we will continue to follow up on
Well,
it.
thanks. I just thought we could, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, Counselor Smith? did
I
you have-
wondered if it would be helpful for us to reach out to one of our elected representatives in Salem, because this is a bigger
We will
issue.
certainly explore all of those
They
options.
might be helpful.
Yeah.
Will-
It was on my radar of, thinking about that, and and Southern Oregon, we ended up going with federal legislation, obviously.
Yep.
related. But what is also illuminated is that UPS is
Yes.
clearly, and they are gonna have different rules that will be applied, that you will have to learn the navigation tips and tricks of what works and what doesn't to some degree. I think probably our solution set is primarily limited to USPS issues with the zip code. I think we can, maybe there's some value in kind of sharing what the tips and tricks of what they've learned to try and increase the odds of getting some of the alternate delivery services working. But my take is primarily what I think I can bring back to the table is something.
USPS. Yep.
And that has,
Yep.
that takes off in staff, not the actual. But staff of the legislators. Connect the dots.
So we will
Well,
certainly.
Thank you.
follow
I
up.
know we may not be able to solve everything, but I thought it could be as simple as adding 4 digits to our zip code that people don't know about. It could be as simple as talking to Dairy Mart and have them talk to UPS or somebody for us, but thank you for at least listening and maybe,
Commiserating.
so.
You'll get our response in the mail.
Thank you.
Maybe.
Thank you. Is there anyone else signed up to speak, Sammy? Yeah. Okay. Well, then we will move on to the consent agenda. And counselors, you may remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion by requesting such action prior to consideration. So we have the minutes from the January 9th meeting. Are there any corrections, additions to that? If not, I will consider a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I've moved to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Counselor Engebretson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Counselor Smith to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. I didn't tell you what to do, so thank you for filling in that blank. I didn't hear any opposed, so the motion will pass 5-0. Thank you very much. And
Quick
moving,
question, who is doing our minutes now?
we're doing them internally at this point, and that's why it's so important that the microphones are on and that everybody can hear, because it comes for the tape, and that's how they're transcribed. No special guests tonight either. We do have some ordinances, resolutions, and contracts. And let's see. Mr. Hanks, are you going to present those? Okay.
The first item is a resolution, for the annual, adjustment, cost index adjustment to system development charges. We had this on the agenda, in January, had a conversation about it. From the staff side, we wanted to, make some alterations to the prior resolution format that we used in prior years. So we can bring it back, February meeting. The primary change in the resolution from the last year, and I believe the last few years, is to the table that have the rates in them are not the calculations of a typical residential rate. They're actually kind of a 2.5% applied to the actual unit rate that each of the four SDCs use to make their calculations. So in the staff report, I provided a couple examples of that. The easiest example is all of our SDCs have a per unit calculation and a base unit rate and transportation rate of $419 per average daily trip. That is how, when we do building permits, we establish those SDCs. What that particular proposed use falls into. Book, it has tables and tables of studies of daily overall. There's all kinds of different. But ours uses the average daily peak trip. So you look at some kind of home trips and multiply by the 419 gives you what their residential. Back by the 419. So the point being that the core resolution really is best index and best rate change shown by the actual base. Is the ENR, which is a pretty standard utilization of a construction cost.
Any questions for Mr. Hanks? And I would entertain a motion to accept resolution 2024-01, a resolution adjusting the rates for the water, wastewater, transportation, and park system development charges. Again, this is for when people are building, when they are attaching to our system.
I move to adopt resolution 2024-01, a resolution adjusting the rates of the water, wastewater, transportation, and park system development charges.
We have a motion by Counselor Wells. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And a second by Counselor Fox. Accepting the resolution, adjusting the rates of the water, wastewater, transportation, and park system development charges. Is there any discussion? None. I will ask for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And none opposed. So the motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And now we have the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities Grant.
Yes.
Thank
this-
you.
this
Better
one-
known as CFEC.
feedback. Yes, the internal, multitude of acronyms, CPAC. This item is, in front of you is, following our grant, process, which is to request, people, get approval from the council to apply for grants over 10,000. And also you get council authorization to accept grants, that are over 10,000. This one happens to be, smushed into one. It is a request to apply and be authorized to accept all at once, because there really wasn't an application process. So, we were notified that we are going to be participating regionally in the CPAC, which we are, that this is an available piece of funding without a grant. So we didn't have an application prior to that. So in this case, apply and accept. I would note that this is one of those that I've seen a couple of that. There's another one that Ryan and Megan and I are working on for stormwater and TMDL, where the state is doing this a little bit more, providing some basically staff time reimbursement for finding, going through processes to meet a fund. And so I think that's it. And, not saying too much, but it's a bit of the addressing the unfunded mandate component that with school and us to be a lot of these efforts, apply these in a way that gives us a little subsidizes our efforts that helping people cover
I will entertain a motion to apply and accept the CFAC grant. This is really because we are involved in the regional, in the planning and transportation as system as part of Eugene and Springfield. So it sort of all comes together when we talk about Lane Act, when we talk about the MPC, when we talk about all of these other things. It's because we have this little carve out, which is at times very helpful. And it is helpful when we're looking for grants like this.
Well, I'm gonna move for anything that brings us in money. So I move to authorize the city administrator to sign the grant agreement for the acceptance of grant funds from the Department of Land Conservation and Development to implement climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Counselor Wells. So we have a motion by Counselor Fox and a second by Counselor Wells to authorize the city administrator to sign the grant agreement for the acceptance of grant funds from the Department of Land Conservation and Development to implement climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking. Is there any discussion?
Just a question, Adam, you said $16,000? I thought it was 13. It says 13.5.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. No, I'm just thinking I was looking at the wrong one.
Who says you're not good with numbers?
I can read. That doesn't mean I can do very well.
Any other questions or discussion? Good clarification. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Any opposed? So we have the outcome is 5-0. The motion passes. And now we have another staff report from Mr. Hanks on the pump award. Is that correct? Is that right? Or are we on to something else?
Water system.
Water
Yeah,
systems
equipment
equipment contract. Yes.
No, if my mistake on the script.
Okay. I was,
The mural donation was in there.
Oh, I apologize. I missed that. So it's the mural. Let's go to the mural donation. Well, that would be council action items.
That's number 5.
Yeah,
That's number 5. So the next is the water system equipment contract. Yeah.
Got it, okay.
Me too.
Yes, so this is another one, I'll probably start this with a preface that we talked a little bit about the purchasing ordinances. Next month, we'll have a packet for you of proposed changes to our purchasing contract ordinances and rules, and this one is a great example of one that we changed. And the direction in it tonight, where it doesn't take much to exceed the current signature authority. $1,000 is very low for us to be able to operate, and this is an example of normal equipment. So precursor for a conversation to be had about having these all wait for. But nonetheless, the one in front of us here is a contract. We've got three bids, very competitive bids, all within a very dollar to each other. In some cases, for a pump motor replacement, one of the wells. Probably not so coincidentally, the problem occurred with power outages during the storm. We put this on the list of the items, we'll talk about that in the after action review. We put it in the list of items for potential reimbursement due to the storm. We don't know whether or not it will end up being eligible for reimbursement or not. We'll pay. It's relatively old. It's near its end of life. It's probably not quite at end of life. This contract also includes a option of this $4,000 to potentially replace the pipe. Also, the pipe we pulled for the pump motor. If the pipe is in bad shape, we have the contract after this pipe. Good. Two is offline until this is completed. This time of year, that's not super concerning to Brian. It's never good, but it's we'll do that. The request here is to authorize the acceptance of the bid, and contact them. Get that ordered and
Question.
Yes, Councilor Lehman.
Just because they're expensive, I'm assuming if we pull this out, we can determine whether or not this can be repaired and kept for replacement in the future. And is it the same pump as well number 1?
I'll have Brian answer that one. I think we answered at least on that.
Mr. Harmon, would you please provide us with your
You
input?
bet. The answer is no to both. Typically, those submersible pumps, the pump maybe, but the motor probably not. Those are typically just a throwaway item. So the pump, yes, maybe we may be able to go through it, but I think it might be more of a hassle than what it would be worth.
And is this is a company that we have used in the past?
I don't believe we've
No.
used this company in the city of Coburg recently, but possibly in the past, they have been used here. I've never seen their name come up.
Okay.
Yep.
And the pipe, so the pipe is the original pipe for that well, or?
The last time it was pulled, so 20 years ago, that pipe was installed. Yes.
So it wouldn't be terribly surprising if it needed to be.
If
replaced.
it shows signs, of excess wear, yes, we'll just go ahead and replace it. It's much cheaper to do it
Mhm.
all right now than, especially if we're doing a pump and motor. It's not gonna take much arm twisting for me to say, just get the pipe. The pipe is readily available. So it's not like we're gonna be waiting, another 4 weeks for the pipe.
Anybody else? Any questions for Mr. Harmon? Counselor
No,
Fox? No? Are we ready? I am ready
you.
to entertain a motion. Thank you, Mr. Harmon. I am ready to entertain a motion.
I move to approve the bid from Rainbow Pump Company for $23,236.50 and authorize the city administrator to execute the contract for the purchase and installation of the pump equipment.
Second that.
A motion by Counselor Engebretson and a second by Counselor Lehman to approve the bid from Rainbow Pump Company for $23,236.50 and authorize the city administrator to execute the contract for purchase and installation of the pump equipment and pipe if needed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. So 5 in favor, 0 opposed, the motion passes. Thank you. Now we're on to the mural donation, and we have a staff report from Mr. Hanks.
So, this is, I think, the second application that's come through with the new mural policy. This one is a little bit different than the first one that council, went through the process on and approved, in that it is required to go through the mural, policy as well as the, donation, policy, because it's being, put on in public right away or on parks. So it goes through both. It was the first public art was, private building, so it just had the mural policy component. This had both, because this ended up being something that is, in fact, given to, city. For all that's involved. So, both processes, were shepherded through by our planner, Megan Winter, and, so in the packet is, the findings for the mural policy component. All of the application, the criteria that, are involved in that process, and then as well as summary of the process for the acceptance of donations. Now we're actually part committee. They approved or recommended approval as well. The final decision of acceptance of items, donation items for the city council. So 2 steps have been completed, and this final step to approving the art and accepting it. Placed on the backside of the bathroom building.
Is it on the back or is it on the south? end?
Outside.
So the end,
On
Yeah.
the south side facing the playground, yeah.
yeah, that's how I, it is a beautiful rendering.
There it is.
In my opinion, art is always in the eye of the beholder. I understand that.
They're gonna paint it on a board and then install the board or?
That's what the that's what the proposal is it, I think 3 sheets of plywood is what I read. And those would then be attached, and so they would paint it on there, and then it would be, you know, with 2x4s behind, attached to the bathroom wall, so that there's breathing space behind it, which would preserve not only the cinder block, but also the mural. Yes.
Question maybe to Brian. Do we have any cameras over there? You know, we've had a spate of some. What do you call it?
Vandalism.
Thank you. Vandalism, and I'd sure hate to see something like this get trashed without knowing who did it.
No, there's no camera on that. Excuse me, that would, you can see part of, the playground, if you're standing at the edge of the concrete looking south.
Mhm.
You can see some of that, but you're not gonna be able to see like directly 90 degrees around the corner.
Okay.
But if something does happen, you should be able to see somebody coming and going possibly.
Okay.
So there are some cameras there?
Yeah, there are. Yep.
And the art committee, according to, you know, what I read in the packet, was not terribly concerned because it's going to be, they've not had any defacement of the quilt block
Yeah.
that are up,
Surprising, too.
and so they're thinking that this is going to be pretty safe, and it sounds like you're in agreement with that.
Yeah.
I mean, none of us ever know for sure for. Counselor Lehman.
Do we have any signage that lets the public know that it's under surveillance?
Smile, you're on camera.
There used to be a sign up there. To be honest with you, I don't know if that sign's still there or not.
Probably something we should either decide we should have or shouldn't have.
I think it is.
I want to say there is between the doors, but it
In-
might have been
Yeah.
taken down. I can't remember.
We'll check.
Yep.
We'll check. Those are great questions.
The idea of kind of preventing vandalism on this is probably to put it, even though it's going to be sealed with some graffiti proof paint and sealer, is to put some sort of protecting over it, like plexiglass or something like that. Just an added barrier. What's that?
Mona Lisa comes to mind.
Yes,
No,
we've just seen that recently, haven't we?
That's such a target. Yes. Right. I would entertain a motion and a second if you're ready to do that. Accept the donation and approve also the renderings.
I move to accept the donation of the original art mural from Coburg Main Streets to be installed on the south wall of the Norman Pfeiffer Park restroom building.
Second,
Motion by Counselor Fox and a second by Counselor Lehman to accept the donation of the original art mural from Coburg Main Street to be installed on the south wall of Norma Pfeiffer Park restroom building. Is there any further discussion? No? I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
I
5 in favor, and so there shouldn't be no opposed since you're all in favor. So the motion passes 5-0. And now we're on to administrative information reports, unless I missed something else, and certainly let me know if I did. So, Mr. Hanks, would you like to walk us through that, or?
Looking through it, I'm not certain if we got our wires crossed on the police department quarterly report. I don't know that we have the actual.
yeah, it is.
Thought
It
it
is.
was, yeah, I think it
49.
is.
Page 49.
Okay, good.
We just
All right.
did that just to
Good. Now it's
confuse
right.
you.
Stressing out. Okay, good. Well, I will, I have nothing to add on that one. I'll just turn that one over to Chief Clark.
Chief.
I'm continuously amazed at how much our police department does with the number of officers they have in the little town of Coburg where nothing ever happens.
Nothing ever happens.
Nothing
No
ever happens.
police pursuits or anything like that through
Nothing
town.
like that, no.
Nothing like
So,
that.
Well, I turn this over to you.
So before you have the quarterly report, which is similar to other reports, divides police activity and crimes into 7 different categories. And traffic stops, person stops, business checks, patrol checks, crimes against persons, property crimes, society crimes, which would be a DUI, illegal camping, dog issues, a whole list of stuff there, and then warrant arrests. And then all other calls for service. So on page 2 of this report, it shows the, in graph form, the stats for the person stops, business checks, all those 7 categories. On the bottom section, it lists all the stats by the quarter. So you can see from September to December, so 3rd quarter to the 4th quarter, there's quite a bit of a drop in traffic person stops and patrol checks, business checks. Those are police officer generated activities. And in September is when Sergeant Lee got shot. So we were down, and Officer Kevin Wilson retired. So we were down 50% of the police department. So there's a little bit of drop in police initiated activity due to just being short staffed.
was that
September,
fourth-
we were on a
fourth
roll.
quarter?
That was the 4th quarter.
Uh-huh.
So his incident was September 14th. And so we were tired during the 4th quarter. But still some pretty good activity. Person crimes went up by 8, which would be one of your, probably a sexual assault or child abuse, something like that. And then I'll be glad to answer any questions. John?
Mr. Fox.
Is it an anomaly? Regardless of the unfortunate diminished is it an anomaly or typical that summertime is a higher crime rate than other seasons?
I don't know. This answer. Sometimes it seems like we are busier because more people are out, maybe going to the lake. It seems like we get more DUIs during that period of time, but you get DUIs all year long.
Right.
So I wish I could predict that and I could retire.
I've heard that when it gets really hot in this city, the crime goes up.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, people are out later and just, more activity. So
Right, thank you.
Counselor Lehman.
I know you commented earlier that when somebody abandons their motorhome, how expensive that could be, sometimes $25,000 to be able to haul it off and go through the hazmat and everything. I just noticed there's one just north of Armitage Park, which wouldn't be our jurisdiction. Do you get much interaction with the county sheriff about those kind of things to say, hey, do you know this is close to us? How often do they patrol that and act on that?
well, they're out every day dealing with homeless camps multiple times a day. So it's an issue not just for Coburg, but city or county-wide, statewide. And the cost that there was an article in the paper here about it was like $3,500 per motor home. I'm just glad that one's outside the city.
Yeah.
And
I
there's,
think that one has a tag on.
It does.
it does.
They're watching that.
Yeah, and there's several that kind of get moved around that have been in Coburg that end up at other places in the county, Eugene, Springfield. It's just an ongoing issue.
Those 2 that are there, I think were the result of a dedicated plan to clean up right down underneath the bridge there. That happened in, I think it was mid-January, mid to late January. There was one that they had, there's a whole process that, you have to go through to post and tag and give advance notice. And I think those were remnants from that. At least one of them was.
Yeah, if you go to the Armitage side and look across the river, it's pretty incredible how bad it is over there. So that's an ongoing issue, which is why we really develop things like the CHEP program and other things to deal with that issue for Coburg.
You only had the one incidence of illegal camping during this period of time. Is that correct?
That would,
Did I read that correctly?
no, that would not be
No,
accurate.
I
So I might have
understand.
listed it once, but we
I
had
got it.
multiple issues of some of those
Okay.
calls.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, because we had 3 motorhomes out there at one time in the cul-de-sac by the gas station. Yeah. So that's an ongoing challenge.
We had a recent one in the ODOT right of way as well, and some of those don't turn into an actual statistical case. But we notice them, we
Yeah.
see what's going on, and sometimes it's a referral, sometimes it's a question, huddle up and question, do we have the appropriate authority on that one, or is that somebody else's? So some of those, I think there's a lot of general activity on that topic and monitoring and keeping track of things and then applying some of the tools that we have to try and not have them show up as a statistic in here. I think there's an express, plan in place to prevent them in some cases from becoming a statistic of a problem and just being able to handle them and move them along and help them as well.
Yeah.
Not just move them along, actually help them productively move along.
That is appreciated.
Yep.
As a citizen, I can tell you, I very much appreciate you and your officers and the empathy and kindness that is often demonstrated.
Yeah, we just purchased 4 battery jump boxes. So all of the full-time guys have jump boxes so we can start cars. We had a car come northbound off ramp, broke down right in the middle of the intersection at about 5:30, which is not a good time to break down right there. And I ended up jumping in with the jump box and we had him gone in about 2 minutes,
Wow.
which was a relief because if we had had to wait for a tow truck, that could have been, we had actually pushed it out of the roadway if you could have shifted it, but that would have been 45 minutes to get a tow truck.
Mhm.
So those come in handy.
Great investment.
Yeah.
Thank you for
All
doing
right,
that.
thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Larson? Comments? No? Thank you. All right, now it looks like we have finances in here.
Yeah, this is, I've talked about these prior. A lot of work has gone into a variety of things on the financial side of our efforts. And this is the 6-month financials that I wanted to share with you all. And I don't know how much we all want to go through them to see how they're kind of structured. This is a kind of a consistent format that I've used in previous places. And it gives hopefully a really solid overview by fund and also by department. And then a very key piece at the very end, the last 2 pages by the appropriation level, which is the budgetary compliance. Because not everything is approved at either a fund level or a line item level. They're in between there. They're somewhere in between that. And that's what the budgetary compliance shows. That is the appropriation level that is authorized in the budget process. So ultimately, that's what we have to maintain compliance to. And if we are finding ourselves close to being over in any of these categories on page 11 and 12 or 59 and 60 of the overall document, if we are creeping up on being over there, that is when you will see us come forward with a supplemental to adjust that to maintain our budgetary compliance. In that, for that particular page, there is nothing particularly concerning in what I'm looking at for budgetary compliance. The administration department is slightly ahead, but I think that's we've identified the reasons we're slightly above our slotted target of 50%. So I don't see any issues there. As we talk about financials in the future, I think we may, there will be a conversation in the budget process about changing our appropriation levels. I think there's value in pulling capital out separately and appropriating that at its own level of detail. Right now, that is combined. and you look at the street fund, water fund and wastewater fund, capital isn't its own line. It's lumped in with administration department. So it sort of has a potential to kind of mask the kind of financial management of operations and maintenance versus capital projects. And I think it may create the need for more supplementals, but I think it provides a little more clarity of what actually is going on and where we have tight spots and where we're doing okay. Doesn't change the total dollar amount of anything. It just breaks out another appropriation level. I don't know if there's any particular, if anyone kind of studied them up and has some questions about them, or I could add a process component of this. These are done every month. The goal is to be done the 10th working day after the month is closed, which is usually the 15th, 16th or so of the month. That provides time to do the bank reconciliations, cash, all of the things that go into generating these monthly reports. Our reconciliation process feeds these kind of automatically. They aren't hand entered independently. They feed into these, so it's a connected system. And provides this. Then we go over every month. The leadership team, well, we hand these out. Everybody looks at them, and then we also have obviously supporting reports that we can generate from Springbrook to provide whoever is day-to-day managing the particular pots of money a little more detail as to especially if there's anything that looks weird, and if it got coded wrong or anything like that. But this is our snapshot monthly, and then the goal is every quarter. We'll provide these in the packet every month to you all. The council meeting is soon after these are completed, and then we'll do the quarterlies that'll give us a little more of a dive in and talk about them more. But this gives that interim period between the quarterly reports a chance for council to also track how the finances are going.
Mr. Wells.
You will go ahead.
Well, mine's not a
Mr. Fox.
question, it's a comment. For years, I've been talking about budget to actual and percentage difference, and I never articulated it right, but this is exactly what I was looking for. This is an easy read format. This compares one year to the next. This is the way it should be done. This is lovely.
But glad it works.
Then I should have gone first. Because I don't understand it at all. Maybe, I guess I understand. I'm just looking at the first on page 53. And this is why I struggle with this kind of thing, is you have fiscal year 2024. Our fiscal year runs from June to June, is that correct?
July 1, June 30.
Okay, so you have fiscal year 2024, you have the actual, like, let's just take taxes and assessments, the actual of 899, 730, budget is 989. Okay, well, how can you know, are you projecting forward what it's going to be at the end of fiscal year 2024?
No.
Or is that year to date, or is that, what do you call it, fiscal year to date?
This is fiscal year to date through the end of December. So this is 6 months. That's a 6-month number. You picked an interesting one, taxes and assessments in the general fund. We that particular revenue stream, we end up getting in November, December, obviously when people pay their taxes. So that one gets close to 100% way earlier in the year. It doesn't follow a monthly trajectory. So that is the 6-month actual. We
Okay.
just are really close to our full year budgeted number.
Okay, gotcha.
Because
That's what I was like,
because it's a unique revenue stream. Yeah.
All right,
So if you look at the same thing on the utilities, on a water or wastewater, and you look at charges for services, you'll see them much closer to a 50%. Because that's, we get our revenues in our utilities at a more consistent throughout the year basis.
okay.
General fund gets a lot of revenues at very different times of the year.
I get it. And now I understand, because I was thinking, well,
Yeah.
how can they have projected that
Right.
for? So, and then the second set of columns, fiscal year 2023. So the actual fiscal year 2023, again, taxes was 875, 148. But then you have end of year. What is end of year? What does that mean? I mean, that second column, I guess the farthest column to the right. So
It'll be June.
Well, yeah, that's what I don't understand. If the
23.
actual is 875, 148, but then you have end of year 906, 096, what is?
Same columns. So they are the actuals at that same time, at the 6-month time frame.
Oh, okay, so it's a comparison to what
Right.
it was last year. Gotcha. See, I'm sorry, John, but this is.
No,
just-
that's-
That was exactly what I was.
That's a great question.
wanted to do.
I was gonna
Yeah.
add that too.
There's a little orientation to this style of.
It's a little bit
Presentation.
different.
Now I
I'm
understand.
happy to see the debt service included in a very clear way in there. I think that's very helpful.
On the quarterlies, another thing that Greg has been working on with our consultant is just a nice clean spreadsheet of all of our debt service and our debt summaries, our amortization payment schedules. You know, so it helps us for cash flow, and for us, both of us being relatively new, making sure that we're plugging that in for between our two primary bank accounts for cash flow, plus looking at, as we talked about in the retreat, the longer term issue with debt services. You know, do we have opportunities to refi? And if we don't now, know which ones at least we're ready to do when the conditions are ripe. So we'll provide that at one of the quarterlies, is that complete spreadsheet. So we get a real deep dive just at debt, but the debt service is shown in each of the funds.
Mr. Lehman.
Just two observations. In the four funds, there's a total of $650,000 in contingency for those four funds, but none in fiscal year 2023. Just to comment on that.
That I
For
don't,
example, in the general fund, there's $150,000 in contingency
right.
for 2024.
Are you looking at a
Page
specific?
53.
Thank
Page
you.
53, there's a contingency of 150,000 and 100,000 under street funds and 200,000 under water fund and 200,000 under sewer fund for 2024, but none under 2023. So I just wondered, did we not have one, or is it placed?
Correct. I believe I'll double check that, but I don't know that contingencies were utilized in that prior year. I didn't, develop either of the budgets, but yeah,
Just wondered if we didn't have it or if it's placed someplace differently. Did we have a contingency in a different fund that we then transferred over into these four funds?
Kathy may have an answer.
I want to clarify something. It's related to your question. Just to clarify, on the fiscal 2023, last fiscal year, end of year, is that end of year actuals?
I think it's in that period, the same period, if I understand.
It's not budget though, is what I'm saying. It's end of year
Oh,
actuals,
that's
not the
confusing.
budget. Is
Point.
that true?
Yes.
So that's probably why there's no contingency listed. Cause it's not a budget, it's the full year actuals for fiscal 23,
Makes
which
sense.
you wouldn't have anything in
Unless you-
contingency if
unless you
that's,
use
if that's
them.
true.
Right.
So
I
it's-
can look and
okay.
I can follow up with you and look and see what was budgeted for contingencies in prior years. Excuse me, but yes, on this financial reporting, unless it was used, it wouldn't have shown up in that column.
And the other observation I have is I like the percentage of budget to actual on the line items. Would it be helpful also to do that for the total revenue and the total expenditures? It'd be 52% under total revenues and 40% under total expenditures. If you follow that same formula down.
Yes, we could do that. We could add that on there. That'd be fine. From an analysis standpoint, yeah, it's it's more relevant at the individual line, but it doesn't hurt to have an overall target look. Yep, we can add
One
that.
thing we changed about 2 years ago, which I don't think we did prior, was we always looked at the actual versus budget in a percentage as well.
You got that, don't you?
We can add it for the total. Yep.
An observation, I'm sorry, you have these monthly, you do these monthly, right? And can you, based on what happened last year, project what the likelihood is at the end of that fiscal period? Because I mean, it's helpful seeing the percentage budget to actual, I guess, but you're comparing the actual period of 6 months to the budget for the entire year.
Mhm.
So it's, I mean, it's a little hard to see if we're in trouble or not, I guess is my point. But if you use last year's figures, you can kind of project forward what you think the end of the fiscal year might be.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and we do that as part of, so what you'll see in about a month or month and change is, we'll extrapolate out from usually from the 6 month, because we'll start building the budget for the next year. And so we have to project what our expected ending balances are in each of the funds, because that's the carry forward for the budget that we're present to you. So yeah, we will be doing that right in this time frame.
Okay.
Yep. And, capital obviously has a big impact. The good part about budgeting and tracking the exact question you asked is, everybody, on the team are business experts in their area. So they have a really good handle on the operations and maintenance kind of components. Staff costs are pretty stable. Operations and maintenance costs are relatively stable. Capital is the number one variable. And so when we talk capital improvements plan, which is the next work session, that's where we look and see. And the big swings right here, on the street fund, that's the big swing, is funding that we have for a street project that we haven't started yet. And so there's money there without the expenditure. So, when there's big drastic swings, they're typically due to capital and the timing of when those projects happen.
Yeah.
The rest of it is, not completely predictable, but much higher degree of our ability to estimate out.
Oh, Counselor Brunson.
Yeah, so thank you for all these new reports. I appreciate that. It's looking good. I wanted to just check my understanding then also on, like, if we look at page 53, just as an example, which is the general fund. I just want to point out that if we look in fiscal year 2024 at the budget, total revenue 3,410,000 versus total expenditure, which is right there, easy to see, 3,436,000. You can see that net change of a negative 26,000. We can see very easily that we've budgeted to spend more than we're going to bring in. So this was something that I think that's great, because and am I interpreting that correctly? But if so, that's going to be very helpful, I think, to see it in this format. So we can keep an eye on that and just be aware. And I think that gets to, if I'm interpreting that correct, that gets to what Anne was talking about before she left, which was we need to start addressing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's that you're interpreting that right. And I think, that isn't always a bad thing. There are cases when you do build up, carry forward and ending fund balance. It's an informal reserve fund, right? And then you know that you're building it up, and you may make a conscious decision through a budget to spend more of that. So you're spending more than your revenues that you bring in that year, but you're doing that on purpose. So that's that. You're right. That's the ability to track that. And then that really gets to that financial policies conversation of what our ending fund balance targets should be by each fund. And, are we planning and mapping out our programming to ensure that we maintain that target, even in the face of some, revenue constraints. And then that's a choice, right? That's a choice of council to say, okay, is it worth it to stick with our target and adjust expenditures down to go with the revenues we think? Or do you forego meeting that ending fund balance target, the savings account a bit, or the risk mitigation of what ending fund balances bring in order to maintain, to augment your revenue streams that are a little short? So yeah, absolutely.
Couple more things. I
Go
think.
ahead.
So let's see. Now my accounting auditor side is going to come out here, and
Well, we need auditors,
so I'm just
Should be on that committee.
curious. Well, I can only do so many committees. I'm sorry, Counselor Wells. But let's see here now. What I was. Let me go back to it. Oh yeah. So no, that's all right. So one of the things, from an audit perspective is my wheels are turning and going, these are lovely, how do I see that they tie to our system of record, or how does the staff at least see that? And where I'm going with that is just basic auditing, or, you know, these reports are nice, but you could create these in Excel. And I don't know, I have no way of knowing by looking at these if they're coming from our system of record,
the
like our
backup?
Springbrook, or if we have some other process or policy or way to double check that, like staff, to make sure that this Excel, I don't know if it's Excel, I'm just giving an example. This could be an Excel sheet. Do you have a process to just verify that the values you're seeing here
Yes.
are timed out? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the audit is a different process, right? This is a monthly,
Yeah.
these are monthly financials.
To those questions?
Right, and I just, to answer the short answer is Springbrook, which we've continued to utilize. And Adam kind of touched on it earlier when he talked about being able to plug these numbers in and they automate these reports. We have continued our march toward automation, which by using new technology, utilizing Springbrook has allowed us to produce these numbers, which we then can use our accounting system. You know, here's where we're getting these numbers from. So the more we run through it, the better off we are with these reports. They're easier to produce, they're more accurate, they're efficient. So I don't know if that answers.
I think
So,
so. Are
I
you
mean,
saying-
and there's some other things too that we do, but the majority of this, is pulled right from our accounting software.
That's
And it will
nice,
get
yeah.
better with time as we utilize it more and more.
So yeah, clearly that, you know, that's a requirement of the audit
Right.
is to make all those tie-ins and have all that happen. And so that really, this isn't intended to replace the audit process. But it's to, you know, it's a management tool for, you know, for managing the flows and the finances that are that we're spending.
Good. Yeah, no, I just want to make sure we're just a due diligence check that we have some process in place to do that, just because, you know, the audit only happens once a year,
Yep.
but a lot can go wrong in a year. And we wouldn't want to just rely on audit to make sure that things are timed, but rather, you know, it gives me comfort to know that you're pulling this data out of Springbrook, which is our
Correct.
system of record. So that's.
Yeah, and like Greg said, that, you know, the goal is to have less and less sitting in a spreadsheet, right? And that's you know, we're doing that with our payroll, potential payroll conversion. I've got one to bring on the agenda next month for that one. But really is the goal to not have too many external record keeping systems, and Springbrook continues to improve, and we continue to improve our proficiency with it. So
rather than ledgers and multiple different spreadsheets to account for all of the revenue and spending that the city is doing, it's just being pulled in and automated in one area. Did I say that correctly?
yeah, that's the goal. I mean, there's no way to get around having spreadsheets as part of our daily world. But what we want is the core, you know, the core transactions all to be recorded in the financial system. And then how we're able to, you know, extract them, you know, sort them, manipulate them around for different displays, different report displays. We actually are, there's some software within called Tableau, which is a third party that system that Springbrook and many others use that we haven't yet jumped into, which is even a little more seamless connection between our software and these kind of reports that skip the Excel component altogether. But we can't get away from Excel totally. It still has its place.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're still waiting for our audit report, correct?
Yes, right.
Because the auditors have been backed up.
Yep. I had a conversation or email exchange with them today, so we're still grinding away, unfortunately. But we are not. They are.
Right.
We are bugging them.
And I just strongly encourage everyone to look through this, email us if you have any questions or any feedback. If it's missing something, I know some of you expressed some of the things you'd like to see in here, but if it's missing something, or let us know. You know, we're glad, we're happy to put that in here or see how it fits in here. Again,
these documents are for us. So we want to make sure everybody understands them and that they're what the information we're looking for, you're looking for.
And really to expand on that, one of our next projects, like I mentioned, is really to not have this necessarily have this conversation every month. It'll be there available for you all, but the quarterlies are where we'll do a little bit more deeper dive. And then we'll have some more stuff on top of this. We'll have some charts and graphs that give a more visual trending as well. Quarterlies give a better sense of trend than a month to month, and we can point out some of the capital, the status of capital and why things are the way they are, because the charts and graphs kind of display some of those anomalies a little bit better than what these do. And so those will be a little deeper dive that we'll get into. Not at all to say that we can't go over these every month and get additional information, but that's our intention, is to have really solid quarterly conversations with some more detail more summary information, just different displays.
So we're in that conversion process.
Yeah, and this is the baseline that forms that, because all of this obviously rolls up into the quarterlies. So we want to make sure we have our monthly reconciliation process right. Then we put the financial reporting together, and then you layer the quarterlies on top of that.
Councilor Ingebretson,
That's okay. I'm good.
you're good?
Thank you.
Anything else? Any questions for Mr. Peck?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have the procurement and spending authority policy review.
Yeah, this is we've got a process started with our contract legal, the other contract legal, not LCOG, to update our purchasing ordinances. We found some of the bidding and public improvement projects, bidding and contracting processes that we have in place are somewhere outdated. Not out of compliance with state law, but somewhat inconsistent in some places with state law. And so that is in process. There'll be several ordinances that we'll kind of take our purchasing ordinance and put part of it in ordinance, part of 2 or 3 different resolutions. So there's a whole system we'll show you and run through next month as part of the first reading of the ordinance. What I wanted to put out tonight was to get some feedback in preparation for that. And this is one component of what the package will be coming, which is the spending authority. And I mentioned that earlier this evening with the well motor and pump contract. So this is a draft document that would draft resolution that would lay out the spending authority. And what's typical for jurisdictions is the city administrator, of course, has the higher level responsibility and higher level of spending signature authority for expenditures, then department head, and then individual designated employees. Not all, but specifically authorized employees to spend at a different level. Home Depot, getting miscellaneous things that are needed to get the job done. And the idea with this one is trying to get a flavor from council. 50,000 or 75,000. State law is 250,000 for a city administrator. Don't think that's appropriate for all but the biggest cities that have lots and lots of zeros on everything they do. We have some that happens sometimes. But I think in looking around and getting a flavor of many of the other cities in the region and the state, a very typical number is 75,000 to 125,000. And looking at the one we did earlier today, that's a pretty standard pump and motor, and it just goes with how much things cost and the trade-offs. Really from a council perspective of how much do you want to have show up here to approve is obviously your discretion. The downside is it can slow down our ability to take action, do the work that you've authorized. And in no case does the city administrator have the authority to sign for something that there's no appropriations for. So that is kind of a default, is that it must have appropriations and meet the spending authority resolution. So this was just to get a initial feedback on what is the comfort level of this council. 10,000 is the current, and I would, we'll live with whatever you prefer. I would advocate that 10,000 is quite a bit low. 50 or 75,000, I think, is a pretty middle of the road figure for most city manager signature authority. But
If I recall, about 4 years ago, it was even lower than 10,000. We had discussion and raised it to 10,000, especially if it were for some emergency need for one of the capital projects of the streets that we were doing at the time. Just for reference, that was my recollection. I know we had conversation about it, and I think I actually was the one that said, let's raise it to $10,000 without council approval for those kinds of expenditures. So that's my recollection. But I would agree 10,000 is low. The only caveat I would have is the distinction between an emergency expenditure versus a non-emergency expenditure.
And that is listed in this resolution as well. And it basically, that this is again movable to whatever council feels, but the idea was that emergencies would basically, whatever the spending authority is per level, the 3 different levels would double in stated emergency. In a declaration of emergency, all numbers go out the door when you actually do a declaration of emergency. This definition is a little short, can be for things that are the pump. If it was August, well, number 2, this resolution, if this were in place, Brian would go get bids and get, and come to me and I'd sign it and we'd be done.
And we should be up with the bigger cities as we are number 143rd on this list.
That's a good one. But a declaration requires, when it's in a declaration of emergency, it allows the city administrator to sign for basically unlimited, but must be ratified by the council at the next meeting. So it does have that connection. These, in discussion at the staff level, we've talked about this quite a bit. And, I think with the city administration report, the idea really functionally is to have conversation about any significant expenditures. The primary issue is timing. And when we're having one council meeting a month, that can rear up and bite us a little bit. It's not the end of the world. If council prefers it to stay at that level, there'll just be a lot more of those kind of things show up. And frankly, sometimes I wouldn't be surprised if a few have slipped through and have gotten to 10,000 that weren't intended to be 10,000 when they started and didn't come to council. I think that might have occurred because I have a hard time honestly remembering that. I haven't had that level before in a long time. So I had to remind myself, oh geez, that actually has to go to council. So I can't sign this. So just looking for a little guidance. There's no decision tonight. It would be part of the package that comes over the next 2 months.
If the level was different, let's say it was 25,000, how much sooner would you have ordered that pump rather than having this long discussion over the pump tonight?
About 2 weeks ago.
It's been out for 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
So I think in a city this size, it comes from when you get down to those levels, not only small city, but city didn't manage its money well at one point. And coming up with better money management comes with better responsibilities. I think 50 to 75,000 is more than sufficient, and I would be in favor of that because when I was executive director of an agency, it went from 1,000 to 10,000. Then finally, the board got sick of me coming up. We had a lot of cars, put it up to 50,000, so that I wouldn't bother them with a car every other month. So I think it's understandable that.
And it's a change in financial environment. I think we've all had that discussion here in city council and certainly in our homes. Things just cost a lot more than they did 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. And we do need to recognize that. Unfortunately, but that is the reality.
I would support the same level.
Agree. I think it's a level of confidence in Adam, frankly, too. And you haven't been here very long, but I don't think you'd just willy-nilly go out and spend money without.
Well, there are, there are some checks
Well,
and
sure.
balances,
Sure.
and those will certainly remain in place. No matter
Yeah.
what the level is. Adam and I speak very frequently, and certainly any of you on council are part of this.
And again, to follow it through, there's double checks there's multiple people that sign the actual checks and, there's different spots in the process. This is just authorizing, the expenditure, the actual expending also has a record keeping component and all that. So yeah, we definitely don't want to move around any internal controls or any transparency issues with that. It's like I say, it's primarily a timing thing and sometimes clogging up an agenda with things that are frankly pretty operational.
And how frequently are we getting the list of the checks that are issued each month?
Those are no longer coming to council.
They're no longer coming to council?
Like a check register? Is
No, we
that
used to have
what was?
A list of all the expenditures.
Yeah.
When did that stop?
A couple of months ago, or perhaps
I
now.
haven't done them since I've been here. That hasn't been my experience in prior places to
So it's
do a
just
check
change,
register.
I just wasn't informed
Okay.
of it.
And again, all checks are, I have to sign, I have to co-sign, Adam has to co-sign. If I'm not here, then there's a backup for that. So all checks have to be co-signed. It seemed, in all honesty, redundant to send a check register to council, to have each of you going through each check that was written.
My only comment is it was just a change without any discussion.
And that's probably, you put that one on me. I hadn't had experience there and didn't, I should have looked at what was happening prior.
Tammy?
There has been discussion on it, so it wasn't specifically, we have not had a financial report because we've been rebuilding that. That document that you're referring to was part of our monthly financial reports that came in. So this is the we've been working on it, we're changing it, now it's here. Do you guys like it?
Yeah, and we can put it easily, put the check register in. I think again, kind of similar to our conversation at the retreat is where's that nice level between kind of the details and the ops and kind of the oversight and that definitely this body has an oversight role. My take is it probably wouldn't tell you much other than be kind of curiosity kind of thing. There's several different reports in it, quarterlies. Whatever you're looking for, if we can if I understand what you're looking to accomplish, I think we can augment, this stuff. This is the base level. The financials that we just talked about are really base level stuff. We can augment them with other things. And my intention was to augment them at the quarterly level with kind of more analysis and different kind of visuals of the data and being able to trend them differently. But if there's additional kind of hard data, background data that you want also, that isn't a problem there. It's simple to produce. It's actually easier to produce than the stuff we're producing. Those are just reports out of our system. But what GL account it goes to, that can be a variation on the report. So the check register, I don't think has that. It has some vendor information, but it doesn't necessarily have the default one doesn't have the general ledger information, but we have one that could, if you wanted. We can do it by summary. We're also moving to as much electronic payment as possible, so they're not going to show up as the same on a vendor list when they're when they're done on visas. So you need the backup receipts to really see it and understand what the components were. So I'm wide open to what everybody wants to look at to make sure that you have a comfort level with our use of funds.
My only comment would be if we're gonna do any kind of changes, it'd be nice just to get a advance to say, we're gonna do this differently, any comment or input.
Okay. Good.
Taken. Anything else?
So
And we're closing in. We have the ice storm after action report, which is a red folder item.
yeah, we emailed this out yesterday, so might have got a chance to review it. You know, obviously, everybody is pretty clear about what happened during the event. I'll just focus on, you know, mostly we had, as is kind of typical on, even though it didn't rise to a declaration and a activation of the Emergency Operations Center, any EOC activity, we ended up treating it similarly. Maybe a little delay before we treated it that way, but we did end up treating it that way. And probably there's a, you know, the event debrief, the bullet points are really what we, after the kind of the after action review is a common part of the process. And we included Chief Mitter in with us in the group to go over everything that occurred, what, you know, what went well, what were the problem areas, kind of all the usual questions of an after action review. And, you know, I think the one that comes up in every single after action review that I've ever been a part of is communication. Communication can always be improved. It is almost always, there's an example of a frustrating communication problem that occurred. It's just an always issue. And that's from small events like this to large events. And we had some discussions about that, about radio interoperability, about kind of back channel expectations of texting and phone calls on individual cell phones versus through dispatch versus through the radio. Different agencies, police and fire agencies, operate different in a lot of different ways. They have a lot of different responsibilities in events. And it was great to have that conversation as a group to be able to just flat out say, here's what frustrated me, and then have a response about saying, well, that's not how we operate, and here's how we think you would have solved that. Or, you know, a lot of good stuff came from that doesn't even show up here, and just good relationship stuff. But the bullets really look at things that we think we can and should be doing to assist us when a similar event comes along. And I think we all probably can recognize that that's probably one of our more common events, you know, that we should be ready for. So including training on one, you know, during the summer and kind of thinking about it while it's somewhat fresh. Chainsaws, you know, having an inventory that is shared, you know, so more hands can have a chainsaw on them to clear roads, was a commentary. Fire department has chainsaws, but they have what they call structural chainsaws that are not very good. They take a long time to get through trees. They're great for the things they need them for, is to rip through sheet metal and all the construction things they need to cut and build and vehicles. So that was an item. I think we already have a plan of attack to have a few more available. The use of the city's ATV came up. I think the fire department used volunteers, and the chief was a little concerned. They did it in the event, but they're a little concerned with some liability issues there. And I think that's smart to be looking at how do we share it. I don't think we utilized it during the event, and if they could have utilized it, and we have an IGA, a little agreement to talk about how they, you know, did they buy the chains for it? We get, you know, just very nominal agreements about how to make it work for everybody. You know, the fuel storage and pumping, that was an item that definitely came up the longer we went without power, being able to get fuel for our emergency vehicles and for the fire district's vehicles, as well as our fixed generators. You know, to run our plants, we have large generators that require fuel as well. So continued effort on having a fuel tank and fueling station associated with our Public Works operations building is a high priority that showed real potential for dividends, and also looping in the fire district on that, and potentially other agencies if it's significant longer term outage. You know, Lane County vehicles, others that would otherwise have troubles, you know, refueling, or at least not coming out here, maybe entice them out this way with fuel. And then the biggest operational one, and I think Brian can speak to this one a lot more detail than I, but ran into the issue of our wastewater system that really isn't an issue in other communities, and it wasn't on my radar. From I have not managed a community that had this type of septic step system. So when the power goes out and people are still using some amounts of water and still in their homes, the septic tanks continue to fill, but don't have a power source to. So when it hits the high alarm mark, it triggers a pump that can't turn on, or it tries to trigger a pump, so they can fill up. So Brian ended up testing out kind of a strategy and went and did some pumping just so we could see in a 24-hour, 36-hour, 48 hours, where is that point by which it's a real problem, and we need to have significant kind of manual staff intervention into bringing mobile generation, a mobile generator to the site and actually pumping it down, and just going from house to house to house to pump it down and to buy it time.
Do you want
So yeah, do you want to give a little overview of it? Yeah, I was waiting for you to come up out of my side of my eye.
I'm
Yeah.
like, if he just keeps talking, I won't have to go up there.
But it was like I said, it was a great learning experience for me to go, oh yeah, with a step system, there's a different, the power outage creates a different set of problems for us
For
operationally.
those of us who had wells and septic tanks for years, not living in the city, we didn't flush or do anything when the power was out. My daughter, who lives down in Cresswell, she was telling me, they thought it was pretty funny. She said, when the power was predicted to go out, she started filling up bathtubs and and her husband's going, what are you doing? She said, well, if the power goes out, we won't have any water. He said, no, we live in this city now. So that was good. Her emergency preparedness training kicked in.
Yeah, so we don't have to deal with that here. The downside is that water, we still produce water, but we can't take the wastewater during a power outage. So the prolonged outages, it's going to be really tricky to determine who's going to need pumped and who isn't, right? So what we found were the larger, this is kind of an obvious no-brainer, the larger the household, the faster the tank fills up, right? Smaller households don't fill up, and those pumps don't cycle very often anyway, right? So if it's grandma by herself,
Probably okay.
probably okay. But when events like this happen, what happens is if we think it's just grandma, well, grandma's grandkids might come over and keep grandma company. So if we were thinking, it's just going to be grandma over there, well, now it's a family of 5, right? So it's really hard to say this house will need to be addressed before this house, right? So I think our plan moving forward is, we have a really good plan. It's just a matter of how do we implement it? And that might be, purchasing more equipment. How much more? I don't think we're there yet. This plan is just kind of formulated in the last couple of days. So
To add on to that, I think, also determining who's out of power is a challenge. Who's actually out and how long have they been out? Is a challenge. So we've talked about, the idea of is there any availability for us to get on the back end of EPUD and Pacific Power and not have to bother them and be able to log in and look at their incident outage maps, so we get a better sense. I think what we were doing, and it actually worked worked really well, was social media. Seeing who was saying they were out and knowing where people live, certain names. I'm not good at that. These two are much better at knowing, that person, they know where they live. And then so we could kind of guesstimate when something's out or where it's out. So that's a big part of it too, that we're working on as part of the plan, is how do we get a sense of who's out and how long they're out? Because it's not an issue immediately, but it's an issue that we have to monitor.
And trying to get, like Adam was saying, not necessarily a seat at the table with the utility providers, EPUD and Pacific Power, but just having our foot in the door or ear to the door.
Right.
Because what we don't want to do is, you know, when we hit a certain hour mark, let's say it's 36 hours, and that 36 hours is going to come at 10 o'clock at night. Well, one of the things we don't want to do is deploy a team out to start pumping down tanks, and then 20 minutes later, you know, the power comes back on, right? So having that ear to the door is going to be important, but also having the equipment ready to go to deploy when it is time. Yes, ma'am.
Couple of questions. I know years back, we had talked about CERT teams. Do we have CERT teams currently?
Lane County has CERT. That's the Community Emergency Response Team. That is a fairly active. CERT teams must be activated by the emergency personnel. And so during this experience, none of the CERT teams in Lane County were activated.
So is our CERT team something that we can do with our own
We
citizens?
could have
as a
our
city?
own, Coburg could develop their own, you can't call it CERT, but
their
it could be an
citizen
emergency
emergency
response, a citizen emergency response team.
So, and in that vein, I
Yeah.
don't know as far as generators, but just in, you know, thinking a lot
Who
of
has a
people out
generator?
here have generators where if we had areas of the neighborhood where one person in a situation like that would be the contact. And then anybody, an asset map of who had generators and the ability and the knowledge to hook them up, that might in
Yeah,
a
Bill.
large,
Yep.
you know, a really large event, this was
Yep.
big enough, but
So at building an inventory of resources is going to be important. We've talked about this, you know, relying on the one rental company we do have here in
Right.
town. That's pretty important. And the key is how do we do this safely, right? Because we do have to get in the panel. We do have to, you know, deal with electricity. Who's going to be doing that? Public Works is most likely going to be the ones doing that, right? So, and then having the also the inventory of people that are, because after this, the after action for most residents is the gut reaction is, well, I'm gonna go buy a generator and, you know, I'm gonna hook it up to my main panel and have a disconnect, and, you know, no one will have to worry about that, right? So having that, also knowing who we don't have to worry about in the event of an emergency.
and that might be something that each neighborhood could
Mhm.
have a go-to person that would let people in charge know this person has 5 people in the home, or this person has no power, the others do. Just a thought, and it might be, Main Streets had talked a little bit about doing some asset mapping, and I know we did it through Ford Foundation at one time, because out here, you know, we do have people who have tractors and generators and ATVs and
So what I think Adam touched on this a little while ago was, we did dodge a bullet in Coburg. Other cities did not. And what we're basing our reactions and our plans moving forward are going to be on those other cities that didn't fare as well.
Yeah.
Right? Because that could happen here, right? A storm cell could just roll right around and lock right in here in Coburg very easily. So we just have to be prepared, and, you know, it will happen again. Ice storms are.
Something will happen.
It will.
That's right.
Severity is, you know, we could have a dry summer and the trees might not fare as well. And then that winter we could get, you know, an inch of ice, and that's when the trees will come down, you know, the unhealthy trees, right? So having a plan to get them trimmed, maintained, just like we've been doing, I think that we're headed in the right direction for preparedness. And I think that that's, other cities may not have been that prepared.
Some of our efforts on the generators, you know, and additional supplies are multi-purpose, right? We want to make sure that they have a use during the year, and that they're able to be used and redeployed in emergencies, so we can consolidate them for a particular use. when it's not an emergency, we have, utilization of them because there's nothing worse than a generator that you never use. It doesn't like to,
Get 'em
doesn't like to
started.
fire up. It gets old fast and, it's not a good use of funds. So a whole mixture of everything that's been said, I think there's definitely use for some kind of crowdsource kind of functions.
Mhm.
But as Brian said, there's some significant legal liabilities and risk and things that there's just no way that we can have volunteers doing because those are owned by the city. That's a public infrastructure, and doing it wrong could be worse than letting it overflow. Yeah. So
Would it actually overflow at the septic tank or would it back up?
So
to that?
that's a great question. So it's always the path of least resistance. So if your lids are secured tightly down, your clean out caps are secured tightly down, it's most likely going to come out in a tub
Mhm.
or heaven forbid, a walk-in shower. That's usually where you're going to see the damage is when, it's just a little lip into a walk-in shower, right? So a tub can hold,
A lot.
a lot.
gives you a little warning system.
Right.
Yeah.
Ours is
Um,
upstairs.
So, yeah. So, obviously, the system was designed to have 24 hours of hold capacity. And what we found in our little beta testing, I guess you would call it, is that some of that held true. Because most of the tanks that we saw that where the pump float was in the up position, it was ready to be pumped. And there was only 2 that were up into the riser. That what I'm saying probably is not going to make any sense to anybody in here, but there was only 1 out of the 6 that was right at ground level. So that's good. That means we had a little bit more time,
Mhm.
but we decided to go ahead and pump those. And when we did, it wasn't 20 minutes later, here come the linemen to turn the power back on. So anyway, with that said, yeah, I think what we're doing, the plan moving forward, I think is a good one. And
So it might be reasonable that we do some public education too.
yep,
That in
absolutely.
case of the next power outage.
Yep.
Remember this,
Yep.
whether we do or not. I mean,
I think that's going to be more formalized maybe this summer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is
Yep.
what we're
Okay.
thinking.
Yeah, there's probably 3 to 5 different, discrete educational items I think would, that we want to put together and get out the door. And one of them it was interesting too, that we had to wrestle with right away is the usual thing when it's freezing and you want to not freeze water pipes is you leave a little water on.
Yeah.
Well, that fills up a septic tank. So to solve one thing, you're hurting another thing. And so there's some education I think that we need to do to kind of prioritize. And it is also based on, as Brian is saying, our job is to think of the worst case scenario and to plan for systematic, like we saw in other communities. What we hope and is more probable to occur is a spotty lesser version of what we are planning for. But, and so we can educate, to help keep that at a minimum. But the stuff that we're putting in place are things that if when we have half or more of the town and it's at the 48-hour mark, do we have the capacity to actually do that, to handle it and not have a public health hazard created? And, inconvenience, is one thing, but this is also public health stuff. And how do we do that for the long haul? Seeing that many parts of the community, or not this community, but the region were out for far longer than that. So, what's an initial burst and then what's a residual follow-up plan should it go on longer? And so it's ultimately, I think it's going to be a bit of a formal write-up and an inclusion into the emergency operations plan. If it's probably there and I haven't looked specifically at that section in a kind of generic way, but I think we'll be able to augment it and have a real detailed operational plan for how to address it. So that was probably our biggest technical and decision-making event or component of the event. And I would say that was handled really well. We had good brainstorming, got some good plans. and everything else, that was also happening out there was handled really well. We had a lot of overtime. We had duty. We had the interesting part, and Brian can elaborate, that when the wastewater plant doesn't have stuff flowing into it, that changes what we do there as well. And that
Yep.
was another little twist of how do you get the chemistry right and to make that still function when you don't have water coming in, which is not a normal part of the process. It's not designed for that.
Right. So, we could probably go on for hours.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and, you know,
We could do our own after hours or after.
we could
after
probably do a
action
work
report.
session maybe this summer. I don't know. But, yeah, there's
Okay.
a lot of little things like Adam was saying that we were like, oh, I didn't realize that would happen. Right. Or when, the power company, that main power supply is, a breaker or a transformer hasn't totally tripped, and you're getting that fluctuation in power.
Yeah.
That was causing the water system all sorts of havoc, and that's what caused a lot of the overtime, is because we'd have to send somebody in, and it seemed like it was every 20 minutes all night long for 3 nights straight of, you got to go in and reset it. You got to go in and reset it. And that happened at the plant several times too. But I think we figured out those bugs, and I don't know if we're going to have to worry about that again.
Let's
So-
hope not. Let's hope not for a long time.
Hopefully.
The final piece of that one is the financial impacts, and other communities, that the county and other cities did formally declare a declaration of emergency, which then triggered some state stuff, which then allowed all cities to submit. So we were included, asked to submit, did we have any eligible damage? And the idea in all those is to put everything down possible that you think is associated with the event, and then they'll tell you later whether or not they're eligible or not. So we have $81,000 that we submitted. That includes the pump and motor we're talking about earlier. Burke Hansen, who is our emergency management coordinator, he attends the regional meetings. Right before we sent this out, got the number. 45 million was the total for the region. So pretty significant amount. So we'll see what we get back in reimbursements. That was, cleanup of the branches along the street. So we had to track all of our hours and volumes and all of those things. So there's a lot of record keeping components that we have to be sure before we just go out and fix things and clean it up is, okay, do we have a system to record everything right? So we know what it's costing us. So we have the opportunity for reimbursements. And that takes that little half extra beat to make sure that we're all square on recording and taking the photos and having the backup documentation that I've been through in some FEMA reimbursements that, they get down to it and you have to provide documentation and backup, and your contracts for people have to be on legitimate, have to have all the components that FEMA requires, or the contract doesn't matter and you're not eligible for reimbursement. So a lot of pieces that were exercised in this event. So
I would like to give a public acknowledgement to Commissioner Buck. I think she personally called every mayor and every city administrator within Lane County to check in and see how were we doing? What did we need? Did we need anything from her
Yep.
personally as a commissioner? So that to me was very impactful. I appreciated her time. She was working really hard to maintain those relationships and make sure that our communities in Lane County were heard and taken care of.
And I did forward her the 3 council update emails just so she could see what I was communicating to you all, so she could get a sense of the scope for us, which was less than some of the other cities
Much
that she
less
was
than
calling in on.
others,
Yeah, yeah.
And any questions on the city administrator's report or anything you wanted to touch on specifically, Adam?
maybe the first one, that shared revenue report from League of Oregon Cities. I think it's a great document. They produce it every year. It's actually super interesting. I either remember or learn something new every time I look at it. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. So I just think it's chock full of some really good information about the methodology for some of these state revenues that we get our share of. And like I said, the majority of them are based on population, but they often have some other twists and turns that impact how that allocation is done. And again, that from a budgeting standpoint, that's what every city kind of uses to for those revenue streams to kind of estimate what's coming in future years. So
Are cigarette taxes still down and liquor still up?
$2.
Oh, yeah.
$2 a pack.
Well, but the revenue for cigarettes is down, continues to trend down, which is good.
is the theoretical
But-
objective of that tax. Yeah.
Revenues are up, so that's good, I guess.
Seen some COVID, the 4 years of COVID and liquor taxes, some very interesting
Yes.
data analysis. Yes.
Yes. Counselor Lehman, you were going to say something? No.
And the last item I'll mention, and Sammy already mentioned it earlier, but under the capital improvements plan update, when I wrote this and submitted, I had it down for that fourth Tuesday for February 27th. That is not February 27th. That is now March 5th. Yep.
And we'll you'll send us out a calendar
will, yeah.
update
Yep.
and reminder. Thank you. Well, I'm looking forward to that update. I'm very interested to see how that falls out, and what we learn from that. Approximately 100 yards of tree branches were collected. Wow. Okay, anything else for the good of the order?
Does
Council
Brandon
comments?
Rhodes still want to be on council?
Did you change mind?
Couple deep breaths.
I have one thing,
Yes.
really happy to see that the mural has come to fruition, and I don't know, just wanted to do a shout out to Megan for her hard work to be able to help with the process of putting in the application to planning, but also, as Brian knows, that's been like a 2 to 3 year project for the community and for Parks, and Parks worked very diligently, had a lot of patience and stuck to it to do that.
Which
Donation policy, Megan Winter.
Oh, big.
planning.
Okay.
But the donation policy to Parks, and then we worked with Anne to try to come up with a mural policy. So it has taken 2 to 3 years. So I think this mural unveiling maybe could be a celebration for community perseverance.
much-
to get Something done,
You bet.
even more than the pickleball court. It's
Good.
exciting to see that starting to happening, and hopefully the processes in the future for more artwork will be easier.
Murals can bring a lot to communities. I had the opportunity in August to go to the Oregon Mayors Association conference. It was in Hood River, but we went up to the Dalles, and they have a very vibrant mural. Now, obviously, a larger city than Coburg, but beautiful murals. I mean, they invite, there's a national artist group that comes in and just sort of paints like all weekend, and these are absolutely phenomenal. But it is a process. The approval process is a big deal, and having the groundwork in place. And that was just this summer. I think we passed the mural.
And it was quite a while in the making behind the scenes, so hopefully, because murals can be beautiful, but more controversial than they are
They
beautiful if you don't
certainly
have the
can
right
be.
things in place.
Yes.
So awesome to see that our first big mural has, second, Brandon's is beautiful too.
Yes, yes.
So-
We're getting there. We're stepping forward now. Counselor Wells, anything from your?
Oh, I'm just curious, what Brandon, you did a mural? Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Yeah, that's really cool.
So there's a difference between, on private property, but you still have to go through
Gotta go through
the process.
yeah.
And then the public, you know, where it's a donation, that adds that other little wrinkle. Art does make a city more vibrant. Counselor Lyman? Oh. Counselor Engelbrechtsen?
Well, tomorrow is the Lane Act meeting. They are gonna have it. It's gonna be
Yes.
virtual. If anybody wants to join in, they did mention that, if any other folks from besides the typical representative wanted to join tomorrow on Valentine's evening, they are gonna have several speakers come and introduce various grant opportunities.
Yeah, Megan is going to attend.
Okay,
Oh,
great.
great.
So-
Yep.
I shared that with you and I'm going to listen in. I won't be participating per se, but I will listen.
So I guess we'll see what happens, you know, if any of those, following that, if the city feels like some of those are good opportunities, then that'll be good to have another set of ears in there besides just me, for sure. I appreciate that.
I don't have the heritage thing.
Okay, oh, good. Well, Coburg will be well represented. Thank you. Counselor Fox, anything for you? Good of the order. We did, you and I mentioned when you had the Google map up at the retreat and you could see West Dixon making a U. Remember we talked about that? I walked it yesterday and it does in fact make a U. There's some things I want to investigate before I won't put anything out there, but you can kind of at least walk around it. Yes.
There I might have missed it. Did we formally also just thank all of our public works and police and fire department and everybody that did have, and all the city staff that had to work so hard during that emergency? That was,
I'll put,
we're
that's right.
very appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was, y'all did a great job and it is appreciated not only by council, but also by citizens. So yes, I did mention that in my mayor's little update for January, February, but that's, thank you for reminding me to make that more public.
I do have, I think, touching base with the power people and knowing where the issues are is a good thing because this was a region-wide thing, but in 2018, we had a snowstorm. We were on our street, other side of the street had power, north of us, but we were without for 36 hours. So I remember that more. That was more because took me a while to figure out how to put the batteries in the gas fireplace.
Yes, I know.
It was 54 degrees in our house and so I had the batteries within 20 minutes this time, right down the truck stop.
I figured out where the batteries were and how to turn it on.
No, that's a great.
Adam, anything from you?
No, I got plenty of talking in today,
All right.
as usual.
For the good of the order, we will adjourn this meeting at 8:10. Thank you very much.
Said that you had the porta potty issue with the water. I'm surprised they don't really make